It was absolutely game-changing to not have to come out of pocket for your rental payment.
As like a buyer working with an agent, all the time that a buyer's agent spends with you, like you're physically not paying them anything. Isn't that wild?
I can do this. Do I have the money? Not really, but I can do what he's doing.
I think the bottom line is just taking action. Everything is scary until you do it.
Welcome back to the Sky's Limit podcast with Mike and Ryan. I am Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about something that's kind of important. You know, how do we get started in this crazy world of real estate investing? Mike, what is going on?
What's up, Ryan? Happy to be here. Before we get started, what's going on with you? Like anything new in your personal life or?
I think the biggest thing we have going on actually is it's good old tax time. Tax time.
I hate taxes.
And we're not talking about income taxes. We're talking about property taxes. So I think that's sort of a pain point for us, to be honest.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I think the easiest way to solve that issue for, all the listeners out there is if you own real estate and it's not escrowed, your taxes and insurance are not escrowed, which means it's not taken out monthly in your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment. You have to budget to pay your taxes, and we have not done a good job of that. We'll look at our property accounts and be like, oh, we can make those repairs, those CapEx items, and then sure enough, July, August comes around, and you're like, oh, wow, these are due. Sweet. So the best way to account for that is to make an auto withdrawal from one account to another, just a tax account, right?
Make your own escrow.
Yeah.
Why not? It's, you don't need the bank to escrow it, although it's nice when they do. But if they don't, I highly, highly recommend you escrow for property.
Yeah, we should do that.
Property taxes and insurance.
We should definitely do that.
What's going on with you? It gotta be something good.
Going to France, beginning of September. Flights are there, Airbnbs, hotels, combination of both. But my goddamn passport is not back. I don't have it on me right now. Leaving in 3 weeks. I did the expedited passport, and they say 7 to 9 weeks, and I still have not received it. So I think the fail safe here is you at least in Connecticut, you go down to Stanford, and if they're booked, then you go to Boston, and if they're booked, I think the next stop is New Hampshire. But you have to do it they'll only take your appointment if you're in 2 weeks of your travel date. So I'm not there yet. Don't have the passport back. And then the other thing I kind of screwed up, I'll be honest, totally my fault, was there's like a million instructions when you renew your passport. Already had it. It was expiring. So it should do 2023, just simply renew your passport. I should be able to go to AAA, local post office, whatever, in maybe a week or two, just renew it. I'm a U.S. citizen. Just renew my goddamn passport. Nope. 7 to 9 weeks, expedited, even longer if you're not expediting it. And there's no guarantee. So kind of here, everything's paid for, booked, but my fiance Rachel might be going solo. I don't know. So fingers crossed on that. We shall see. I'll let you know how it goes. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on in my life.
Wow. Good luck with that.
But yeah, let's get into today's show. Wanted to talk about how to get started in real estate investing. In the last show, we talked about our why. Why do you want to get started in real estate investing? What's most important to you? And I really do think that piece comes first. But say you've identified your why, and now you're like, okay, how do I get started? I'll turn it over to you. How did you get started? What did your first property look like? How did you buy it? How did you finance it? Where did you get the money from? A million questions. How did you do it?
I was doing the bank teller thing for 3 years, but I left that in 2011, and I got my first real job. My first real job was paying $28,000, and 2012 really isn't that long ago. So, yeah, it's still not a lot, but I was making ends meet. It's a big increase from $12.60 an hour working part time at the bank. So yeah. I was living in New Britain, which is where we met. I was renting a room. There were 5 or 6 rooms in this duplex that me and my friends were living in. I was paying $475, right?
A month in rent.
$475 a month.
Until utilities included or no?
Not included. No, we were all splitting that 5 or 6 ways.
So you were maybe $550 all in, you'd say?
Right. Our lease was ending, and we're we had been living there for years, right? We're okay, we need to change the scenery at this point. So I was like, this guy, this landlord, first of all, isn't that great. Mm-hmm. Second, isn't doing anything special. He's barely even, taking care of us here, fixing the things that we need fixed. So I was like, I can do this. I can do this. Do I have the money? Not really, but I can do what he's doing. So at the time, the market was not as crazy hot as it is now. So I ended up finding a very similar property down the road, literally almost walking distance. It was a duplex. And
Was this on market, off market?
It was on market back when you could buy things on market.
Right.
Yeah, back in the good old days. And so I looked at it. I really didn't like it. I went with one of my friends, and obviously an agent. And my friend liked it. I'm like, really? Like, you would live here? He's like, yeah, this is awesome, man. This is so cool. I was like, all right, I'll give it a second glance. And I did. And I ended up buying it.
You made an offer.
I made an offer.
With your agent.
Correct. They were asking 140, and with, my master negotiating powers, I negotiated down to 140.
All right. Good job.
And that's what I paid. Yeah. Yep.
And how did you finance it?
FHA.
Which is a
3.5% down.
So you can only, correct me if I'm wrong as the lender, you can only use an FHA loan. Well, you can only have one at a time. And it's a low down loan for basically a first time home buyer. Is it 3.5% down, 3% down?
3.5% primarily. Yep.
3.5%. So you put 3.5%. So you went out to a local lender and you said, I want to buy a 2 to 4 unit property, and you got a loan. I
remember the one thing that they made the seller fix was chipping paint on the garage.
Yes.
They don't like chipping paint.
Right.
So the guy had to scrape it, paint it, and that was kind of like their one hurdle they had to go through, which was lucky, right? Like, because if you've got a property that needs more work, like FHA can be really tricky to get done. So yeah, 3.5% down on 140, like, to me was still a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, I remember my earnest money deposit, which is sort of like the money you give basically at the time you sign the contract.
Right.
So sort of hold your place, was like $1,000, which was still a lot to me. And so,
but that goes towards your down payment.
Absolutely.
So what was your total down? Like, what was your total down payment?
It was just 3.5% of 140.
So that $1,000 deposit, earnest money, goes towards that total $5,500 down payment.
Correct.
So you're out of pocket after that $1,000. You go through the whole sales process, and then you owe another $4,000 and change to make that total down payment.
Strictly for the down payment, though. You can't forget about closing costs.
Yes.
Is your lender collecting a point or two, right, on the loan amount? Like, what, there's going to be more costs than just your down payment. I mean, that's what a lot of first timers forget. That is like, sure, down payment's easy to calculate, but what about your attorney fees, or
attorney fees, title fees?
I'll never forget this. It's emblazoned in my mind. I left work early to do this closing, and I'm sitting in the parking lot of the bank, literally not knowing the exact amount that I need to make a bank check out for. And I'm like, if this dollar amount is like in excess of like $8,000 or something, I'm not going to be able to do it because I don't have that money. I went into the bank and I got that bank check and I brought it to the closing, and that was how I got my first property. But it was dicey. I was making $28,000 a year. Like, it was tough. But remember this, when you're buying an income property, the lender, if you're doing a conventional loan, this is for conventional loan, which is what FHA is.
4 units, right? 1 to 4 units you're talking
Owner
about.
occupied.
Conventional, residential.
Government-backed loan. They will count 75% of the rental income that your property is earning.
Whether it's rented out or not, correct?
Correct. So if it's not rented, you're going to be working off market rates.
Right.
So my $28,000 a year, we take that number and we add 75%.
So let me ask you, so you're making 28 grand a year, working as a bank teller. What was your monthly nut?
If I was remembering correctly, it was $1,200.
So all in monthly costs to live there was $1,200. And what were you renting the top floor out for?
For many, many years of my real estate investing, I was not doing per unit rentals. I was doing rent by the room.
Oh, God bless you.
Yeah. So that's how I started renting as a renter, was by the room. So that's kind of what I knew.
Exactly.
So I moved in to the first floor unit. I made the dining room more or less the third bedroom. I lived in the middle room on the first floor. I had 2 of my friends on the side paying $500 each. And then I had 3 bedrooms on top, $500 each. So that's like $2,500.
Wow, you house hacked the shit out of that, huh?
I did. Yeah. And I so distinctly remember, like, at the time, either your rent or, well, for most people, either their rent or their mortgage payment is their biggest expense.
Right.
And by renting out rooms or by renting out another unit, you're effectively, in most cases, eliminating or really decreasing that number. For me, I completely eliminated it plus some. And for me, that was like, wow.
So you were actually making money while living there?
Making money off my friends while living there. And I kind of felt bad. But
I mean, you were giving them pretty relatively cheap rent, I would assume.
Yeah, I was. And I was a better landlord than the other guy was. So
it's it should be a win-win.
Yeah.
And
it was huge.
That was your first investment.
It was absolutely game-changing to not have to come out of pocket for your rental payment anymore.
That's amazing.
Like,
good for you.
I felt like a baller. How about you?
First investment. Yeah. Again, New Britain, same town as you, Connecticut. 2-family. I was working 9 to 5 corporate gig in downtown Hartford, Connecticut, and came to the realization, found my why, we'll say, going back to the first episode, found the why. I was like, all right, I got to do this. What do I have to do next? I met up with a local agent, and he had some rental properties. I always would implore others to work with, if you're looking for a rental property, to work with agents who are investors themselves maybe, or at least, know the multifamily game. I bought my first property in 2017. And so I was working that 9 to 5. And I knew I wanted a house hack. I knew I wanted to decrease my living expenses. I was living in West Hartford, Connecticut at the time. Buddies right out of college. It was had a lot of fun, but I was spending a good amount of money. And so I knew if I could house hack and live in one unit, whether that was a 2 to 4 unit property, it didn't really matter. Like I wanted to live in one of the units. So I wanted to become a realtor, and I was in real estate class, and I met, I was also looking for, I hired an agent. I was looking for a property at this point. So I'm in real estate school. I'm also looking to buy my first multifamily. And I met this gentleman in class. It was like, luckily it was his last class, and it was my like 3rd class in. So I had a long way to go, and I just started shooting the shit with him. And he's like, yeah, I was telling him I was looking to buy a multifamily. And he's like, oh, I actually just finished like rehabbing one in New Britain. So he showed me a property. It was off market, and it happened to be the one I bought. So I went direct to like owner, which is pretty, unique and rare, and it happens, but like very grateful for the opportunity. And so that was the property I bought. It was fully turnkey. I used an FHA loan, 3.5% down. I was making pretty good coin at my W-2 gig in Hartford. I was in finance.
How much were you making?
It was a commission-based gig, so I think my salary was like $45,000, and then you can make up to like another $40,000 on top. So like doing pretty well, especially out of school. I got licensed for my Series 7 and 6, which is basically like Wolf of Wall Street. Like you can recommend financial products. You're like the same licenses any financial advisor would have. You're 7 and 6. So I ended up buying that duplex, 3.5% down, FHA loan. I was living in the first floor with my now fiance, and my total, so I bought it for $180,000, and I put 3.5% down on it plus closing costs. And I rented the top floor out to a colleague at my work at that time for $1,300. It was a beautiful, like 2 to 3 bedroom apartment, again, in New Britain. And so my monthly principal, interest, taxes, insurance was like $1,560. So I was coming out of pocket $260, making $80,000 a year. I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. Like
you were rolling.
That was the hook for me. I was like, this is sweet. Living with tenants it's something. Like you seeing them every day. If they miss a rent payment, it's super awkward to go through the hallway.
But in the hallway,
it's kind of like you got to graduate. And so I wouldn't change a thing. I was able to. That's how I got to my second property. Right? It's because I was saving so much money by not having to pay rent. I was getting the mortgage paid down by my tenant. I was getting appreciation, and ultimately, I was able to save money and buy that second property, putting 20% down because, as you may know, like you can't have more than one FHA loan at a time. So I had that duplex that I lived in with an FHA loan, and I ideally I'd put down another low down payment on the second property, but you can't. So I had to put 20% down, or 20 or 25% down on that second property, but I was able to save for that because I eliminated my biggest expense.
You've got to make sure that it works for you, right? Like they're going to take into account the income that you make and the debts that you have. Generally, you need to be under like 43, 45% debt to income ratio, right? So like,
so your total like income to expenses?
Correct. On a monthly basis, the income that you generate versus the debts that you have need to be under that percentage. Look into your individual states.
Yeah. So if you got your why, I want a house hack, or I want to buy my first investment property, and I think you need to determine like, are you going to live in it or are you not going to live in it? Because that's totally different requirements.
Oh, totally.
If I'm going to live in this property and I've never bought a property before, I can use a low down loan to your advantage, and I would implore everyone to do that. Like, take advantage of that because you can only get it a couple times, right? What's like the first step? Like, I want to do this. Should I call an agent first? Should I call a lender first? Like, what should I do?
You want to be able to talk to them with like some sort of certainty as to what you can afford. That's the first place to start, is getting your finances in order, talking to a lender, figuring out what you can afford. And now when you get pre-approved, like, you don't need to give them, you can, but you can have a casual conversation over the phone. Like, hey, look I make $24,000 a year. That's $2,000 a month. I've got a $500 car payment. I've got XYZ. And they can basically tell you like, look, this is what you're generally looking at. You can afford a $200,000 house. Like, you don't need to go too wild to just start looking, but you need to get like that sort of general area. Like, are you a $100,000 house buyer? Are you $500,000, million? Like, where are you at? Because you don't want to go to an agent and they're showing you houses you can't afford, because now you're wasting your time and theirs.
Right. Right. And you don't want to be strapped either. You want to be comfortable. Is there, if you're I guess for any loan, is there, like for a conventional loan, which I would say is majority of people, right? Is there a minimum credit score, like at least your company looks for, or lenders in general look for? And if there is, like, are there ways to boost it if you're like right on the cusp?
Generally what we look for, and I really want to get into like a lot of the lending that I do, because that's usually on the non-conventional side. But for our long-term loans, we look for at least a 680 score.
A 680 FICO score?
680 FICO score.
It's a pretty good score, right?
That's okay. It's not bad. Yeah. I mean, 700s is better. 800 is very good.
Will a lower credit score affect your interest rate?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
That makes sense.
And we generally take the middle score of the three bureaus. FICO score is huge. Like, you really want to make sure that's in check. So like, I've learned a lot over like the period that I've been doing the lending. And it's kind of cool because when someone comes to me with like a less than desirable score, I can recommend a couple things for them to do to boost their score. And I have literally seen this work. Like, I've repulled their credit and it is significantly better. And believe it or not, if you come to me and you're like, hey, my score is 670, I'm like, oof, I need a 680. What I'm going to recommend to you is that you pay, look, most people have a credit card balance. Like, that's just the brass tacks of it. Like, most people have credit cards. So the first thing I recommend is that you pay your credit cards off or under like 10% utilization, meaning like if you've got $1,000 limit, let's get that to like $100 or under, which is like 10% or under, right? If you can do that before the close of the given month, we're going to repull your credit around the 8th or 9th of, in this case, September, and we're going to see almost always a bump in your score.
What if you don't? You just can't get the loan?
We look at you as a borrower that does not have a good enough score to repay the loans, to be confident in repaying the loans.
Do you think it's smart to, like, any offer from an agent's perspective, in any offer, you really have like two major contingencies. You have your due diligence contingency, or period, I should say, which is typically a 10 to 14 day inspection period where you put down your earnest money deposit. So this is anywhere from, you know, it could be $1,000 to $5,000, $10,000. It all goes towards your down payment. And that's really your time to do your inspections, right? Get all the lease information. It's ask, you know, the other agent any questions, ask the owner any questions. And for whatever reason, things don't pan out, you can get your money back. But let's say that you have the credit situation going on, due diligence went fine, you're moving forward. You then have a mortgage contingency. And this is typically if a closing, let's say, is 40 to 45 days, maybe less, maybe 30 to 35, depending on the lender. Maybe your mortgage contingency is, if it's a 30-day close, it's 20 to 25 days in. So you did your due diligence in the first 10 days, and now you have a mortgage contingency, which is basically a fail-safe. If your credit isn't good enough, if you repulled it, you can still get your deposit back, which is huge because that's a scary thing. I mean, especially for us when we were first buying, like I was, you know, barely getting by, making ends meet. And so like putting $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 down on a deposit, I'm like, am I going to get this back? Right? Like, what if I don't like the house, or what if I want to pull out during inspections? And so what I always tell people is you have two fail safes. Even when you make offers, like a little strategy talk here, even when you make offers that's an as-is purchase, like I'm in a competitive market like we're in now, you can make as-is offers, still do an inspection and back out. It's like, I'm just telling you, Mr. Seller, that I'm making an offer as is, meaning I'm not going to come back and nickel and dime you for every little thing. I'm going to be comfortable with the house as it is. I just needed an inspection for my own, you know, due diligence, for my own like safeguard, my own knowledge. Like I just want to know what's going on here. And listen, like bottom line, if things don't pan out the way you think they are during the inspection, like who's to say you still can't ask the seller for something, even though you're an as-is buyer, right? It's like, back out, put it back on the market if you don't want to agree to my terms, you know?
Just going back a little bit, there's really two types of loans. Like, are you going to be an occupant of the property or are you not? So are you going to be an owner occupant, meaning you're going to live there, or you're not going to live there, right? So that's like the two really big distinguishing factors, because if you're not going to live there, everything we talked about FHA and everything doesn't matter. That's a big factor to consider. Like, are you gonna live there and house hack, which is what that means, right? You're going to live there and rent out another unit.
Share walls with your tenants.
Correct. Or are you not going to live there? You're going to live somewhere else, and it's just going to be a strict rental for you. So like that's most of the loans that I do. So
if I'm not living there, if I have a great job, I have a beautiful single family house, I just want to invest in real estate, I want to buy my first multifamily. I've never bought in a multifamily before. I just want to buy a non-owner occupied residential 1 to 4 unit property. I have to put what, 20, 25% down?
Depends.
On
Depends. What? And I hate that answer.
I'm so big. I hate that so much.
I know.
Tell me more.
But it depends on a lot of things. It depends on, so when you're working on a non-owner occupied loan that is not something that needs rehab, and you're just looking to get into a long-term, say 30-year fixed loan.
Yeah.
That's basically what we call a DSCR loan.
Are all loans like that DSCR? I thought DSCRs were just based on the income of the asset itself.
When you're not qualifying a borrower based on their income, which is what I do, which is a non-owner occupant side, we are not qualifying people based on their income. We do debt service coverage ratio loans.
Can you qualify people based on their income on a non-owner occupied loan? Okay.
Sure. I don't, there's pros and cons to each, but I love DSCR loans.
Is the rate higher?
It's really comparable. It's honestly comparable.
So if you're basing the loan on the DSCR loan, the income of the property, and it's a single family house, or say it's a 2 to 4 unit multifamily, but there's no income, it's vacant, right? It's just rehab, just put on the market, great opportunity. Like there's no income. What do you do?
Market rents.
Market rents.
Single
family too?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's a purchase, and it's vacant, we use market rents.
You know, I think there's many types of loans out there. So you talk to your local lender, figure out what's best for you. and then call an agent, right? I mean, that's the next step. And I get this asked all the time is, oh, how much does it charge to work with you? I'm like, nothing. Like, this literally costs $0 to work with a buyer's agent.
Right.
A buyer's agent makes their money when the property closes, and it's because the listing agent splits their commission with the buyer's agent.
It's a beautiful thing.
I'm trying to think of other other jobs where like you hire someone and you don't actually pay them until you actually never have to pay them. Like as like a buyer working with an agent, all the time that a buyer's agent spends with you, like you're physically not paying them anything. Isn't that wild?
That's pretty crazy.
Like I'm hiring you, but I'm just not going to pay you.
Right. So have you driven people around like
oh God,
to a million properties and not ever closed?
Yes, 100%. Comes with the territory.
Is that why you're jealous of me and I could sit at my desk being a lender and never
lenders because they don't do. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's like from a lender, you can. What's so cool about lending is like you can do it anywhere in the world. I mean, maybe not world time difference wise, but like you could literally go. If we're on the East Coast here, you could go to California and originate loans on the total East Coast, or snowbird down in Florida and originate loans up here in Connecticut if that's your home base. But you don't have to physically go anywhere. Like as an agent, you're driving around, you're going to inspections, you're showing properties, you're going to appraisals. Like it's a lot of work. I mean, so many people I talk to are like, yeah, I want to start real estate investing. And then 2 years goes by. I'm like, dude, how you doing? Like, still want to start real estate investing. Like 2 years just went, but you just had so much equity in your house or mortgage pay down, appreciation. I'm like, it's easy not to do anything. And that's the issue. You listen to the podcast, you read the forums, you read books, and you're like, I'm ready. And like, it's free to go talk to a lender. It's free to go talk to an agent. It's free to go look at houses. Go look at houses. Get on the MLS. Go on Zillow. Go on Trulia. Start house shopping. And like, as long as like I think your intent is to actually buy something, you're never going to waste anyone's time. So I think just taking like baby steps, like first talk to a lender, get pre-qualified, then go meet an agent. Where do you meet an agent? You can meet an agent in a million different places. Maybe there's local meetups, maybe referrals are probably the best source, I would imagine, but go talk to an agent. I would try to find one that has done multifamilies in the past if that's your goal. And start going to look at houses, start making offers. Doesn't cost you anything to make an offer. The only time it'll ever cost you money in that entire process is when you get something under contract and you have to make your first deposit. And also, by the way, a property isn't fully executed until you make a deposit. So you can make an offer, at least in the state of Connecticut. You can make an offer. You can get your offer accepted. And you think, oh, I have this house. Well, technically it's not fully under contract until you make a deposit. So you have time, I guess is my point, where I made an offer, I get it accepted. Oh shit, what did I do? Like, am I making a mistake? Well, you have time. You can back out. Hasn't cost you a dime up until this point. Like, think about that. That's wild, right? And then you do have to make an earnest money deposit. But by the way, now you have two fail safes: an inspection contingency and a mortgage contingency. The house isn't appraised, you get your deposit back. You don't get a loan, you get your deposit back. You don't like the inspection, you get your deposit back. Like, there's so many ways to get out, which is, I cringe to say that as an agent who I want the sale to close, but there's so many ways to get out. Yeah, I think the first steps, like going back to like, what we're talking about is get pre-qualified, talk to a lender, talk to an agent. It doesn't cost a thing. If I was to come to you today and ask you to get pre-qualified, well, how does that work?
I need to know your credit score. And again, like I was saying before, like it depends which way are we going? Like, are we going conventional? Then I need to know what your income and expenses are. Are we going non-conventional? Then let's talk about the value of the property that you're looking at and the income that it's earning versus what the potential expenses are.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the biggest fears I had when buying my first investment property is I don't know what I'm getting myself into. I don't know how to be a landlord. Especially if it's a duplex or 3-family, like you're only talking to 2 other sets of people or families, like, and you can meet them before you buy the property. So my biggest thing was like, what happens next? So I did all this. I did all my research. I ran my numbers. I know my why. I'm going to buy this house. I finally did it. I talked to my agent. I talked to my lender. I got my attorney. I close. Now what? Nothing changes. Nothing happens. The house doesn't fall down. The tenants don't automatically stop paying rent the next day. Sure, it could happen over time, but nothing changes.
Confetti doesn't fall from the ceiling.
Confetti doesn't fall. The bottles don't pop. Like nothing happens. Like I'm a homeowner now. That's cool, I guess. Right? I'm doing it. I took a step. Now what? And then you get the bug. The bug, like for me, it was like I was like, oh shit, this is cool. I'm a landlord. I'm a homeowner. I'm gonna move my shit in here. I'm gonna live here. I gotta live here for a year per like FHA guidelines. And then like, what's next? Like all that hype and like work. I'm like, now what? Right? That for me, that was like, all right, that wasn't so bad. Like I could do that. I could do that again and again and again and again.
Right.
So,
do you think? Well, we talked about how we got started, individual, but like Skytree Investments,
yeah,
our first property, all that.
So obviously, we each had our own properties, mini portfolios. We'll say.
Right.
I had like maybe 2 to 3 multifamilies before I met you.
Same.
Okay. And creepily reached out to you on LinkedIn based on
pretty creepy.
Wilcox Street Partners LLC, the house I lived at. And you were in Texas. I was in Connecticut. I wasn't an agent yet. You weren't doing any lending yet. You were still working at your company.
Definitely not.
And then we kind of both just like ran out of money, I think. Or like I knew like I couldn't afford the next property without help of some sort. What was it for you?
Yeah. I mean, it is so easy to run out of money.
Yeah, 20% down is a good amount. So
20% down on a $100,000 house, which is cheap around here, is a lot.
No offense, I would love to do everything myself, but I could not be at the caliber we're at now without your help and your expertise and leverage and capital.
Right.
To be honest, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, for us, like you're better at one thing than I am at other things, and vice versa. So we came together, like, yeah, let's buy a property together. That was a 4-unit, right, off market.
4-unit from a wholesaler.
4-unit from a wholesaler. We bought it. We actually raised the capital. Private capital, hard money capital is a whole nother like segment or podcast, I should say. But basically, we came together, we pooled assets, and we found a private lender, like not traditional lending, who saw something in us and saw that we could repay him with interest and points, of course. But and he lent us, I forget what the like loan to value was, what he lent us versus what we had to put down, but we ended up buying that 4-unit property, and that was our first property together. And at that point, we were like, oh shit, like this is cool. We should create like an investment firm. So I think from there, like obviously we've scaled since then, but Skytree Investments I think that's where
how it was born.
Yeah, that's how I was born.
Yeah.
Didn't do any crazy like graphic design or anything, just kind of like created a makeshift website. I don't know, like
your friend crushed it on
she
a
did
logo.
crush it actually. She did a very
She
and we
did a
still
really
use the
good
logo
job.
to this day. You're right.
Yeah.
But didn't like have to pay crazy money to get it going. And
No.
I mean, just took action.
Right.
That's it. Just taking action is half the battle.
Yeah. We got that under contract without even seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty
We
cool.
kept that property for what? 60 days?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
We turned it over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did a 1031 exchange.
Yep.
Bought a 5-unit.
Right. That we found
Seller
from
finance,
a postcard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get into all that in later shows, but yeah, I think the bottom line is just taking action. Don't, everything is scary until you do it. Right. And there's a lot of resources out there, books, podcasts, forums, courses. I mean, there's just so much information, sometimes too much information. Like I feel like I did best when I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Like I'm just gonna fucking do it.
Right.
If I fail, like, okay, whatever. Like the down payment was like $6,500, which is a lot of money, but at least I tried.
Right.
Same for you. Like you tried.
Yeah. No, I always tell people this when I talk to them, like that are sort of on the fence about whether they want to get started or not. It's like every single investment, by and large, every single investment has a level of risk. There's an inherent level of risk. Like you're not going to find something that's lucrative, semi-lucrative, that does not have a level of risk.
That's a good
So if
point.
like you're not willing to like dip your toe in the water, then this space probably isn't for you. But I would recommend you just sort of jump in. Like, yeah, run your numbers. Like, you don't want to make a terrible decision, but we have made so many mistakes. And I think the overarching thing that we've learned is like no property is perfect.
No.
If you're
Learn
looking for
something,
that
you always learn
perfect
something.
property that cash flows like crazy, that's turnkey, that has,
It's a unicorn. They don't exist.
they don't exist.
They don't exist.
The unicorn does not exist in this
Yeah.
world.
Thanks for getting together and doing this. It was fun.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to the next episode and tune in for more.
Catch us next time.
All right. We'll see you.